Some people go through life believing they've missed their chance at love. Roland was one of them, a 52-year-old single father who'd spent decades working himself to the bone, watching life pass by from the sidelines. At a wedding reception, he sat alone at a corner table while couples danced and celebrated around him. Then something unexpected happened. A beautiful woman in an elegant dress walked straight toward him. She leaned close and whispered, "Let's pretend we're together tonight." He didn't know why she chose him or what she wanted, but for the first time in years, he felt seen. What would make a sophisticated stranger ask him to play this role? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock buzzed at 4:30 in the morning, same as it had for the past 20 years. Roland's hand reached out from under the thin comforter and silenced it with practiced efficiency. He lay there for a moment in the darkness, gathering the energy to face another day. He swung his legs out of bed and sat on the edge of the mattress, his work-worn leather watch already strapped to his wrist. It had been his father's once, given to him on his 18th birthday. Roland had worn it every day since his father passed, a reminder of the values that had shaped him: hard work, responsibility, sacrifice. The watch had seen him through everything. It had ticked away the hours during his brief marriage to Linda. It had been on his wrist the day Elsie was born, when he thought his life was finally coming together. And it had marked the seconds of the night Linda left, when Elsie was just 2 years old, leaving nothing but a note on the kitchen table. "I can't do this anymore. I need more than you can give me." Roland moved through his morning routine with quiet efficiency. Shower, shave, instant coffee, and 2 pieces of toast. He'd be at the warehouse by 6, moving boxes and loading trucks until 2 in the afternoon. Then he'd grab a quick meal before heading to his evening shift as a night security guard at the office complex downtown. Weekends he picked up handyman jobs, fixing leaky faucets, patching drywall, whatever people needed. It wasn't glamorous, but it had been enough. Enough to keep a roof over their heads, food on the table, and Elsie in good schools. That was all that mattered. The warehouse job was repetitive but honest. Roland appreciated the physicality of it, the way it kept him strong, even as the years added up. His co-workers were good people, men and women who understood what it meant to earn a living with your hands and your back. The second shift at the security desk was quieter, gave him time to think. Sometimes too much time. He'd sit in the lobby of the empty office building and wonder what his life might have been like if things had gone differently, if Linda had stayed, if he'd pursued the apprenticeship he'd wanted, instead of taking whatever jobs paid the bills immediately. But regret was a luxury he couldn't afford. He'd made his choices, and they'd been the right ones for Elsie. That was what mattered. It was a Thursday evening about 2 weeks ago when everything started to shift. Roland had just finished his security shift when his phone rang. Elsie's name lit up the screen. "Hey, sweetheart," he answered, smiling despite his exhaustion. "Dad, are you home yet?" Her voice had that excited lilt that meant she wanted something. 20 minutes later, Elsie was sitting at his small kitchen table, a fancy envelope in her hands. She'd inherited her mother's delicate features, but had Roland's steady, kind eyes. At 24, she was poised and confident in ways he'd never been at that age. "So," she began, sliding the envelope across the table, "you know my friend Veronica from college? Her cousin Diane is getting married. Big fancy wedding at the Riverside Manor, and Veronica got me an invitation." She paused. +1. Roland picked up the envelope, pulled out the heavy cardstock invitation. The names meant nothing to him. Distant connections to distant people. The kind of event he'd normally avoid. "That's nice, honey. I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time." "Dad," Elsie reached across the table and took his hand. "I want you to come with me." "Sweetheart, that's not really my—" "When's the last time you did something for yourself?" she interrupted gently. "You've spent my entire life taking care of me. You deserve to live a little. Come to this wedding with me. Please, Dad, do this for me. Or better yet, do it for yourself." He'd wanted to say no, but the hope in Elsie's eyes was impossible to resist. "All right," he'd said finally. "I'll go." The next week was spent preparing. Roland borrowed a suit from Pete at the warehouse, a simple charcoal grey that was slightly too big in the shoulders, but would do. Elsie took him shopping for a new shirt and tie, insisting on paying despite his protests. The morning of the wedding, Roland stood in front of his bathroom mirror adjusting his tie. The man looking back at him seemed unfamiliar, older than he remembered, lines etched deep around his eyes and mouth. But the suit made him look respectable, at least, presentable. The venue took his breath away. The riverside manor sat on a bluff overlooking the water, its manicured gardens stretching down toward the shore. White tents billowed in the gentle breeze. Cars lined the circular driveway, luxury sedans, vehicles that cost more than Roland made in a year. The ceremony was lovely. The bride was radiant, the groom clearly in love. Roland felt a small ache in his chest, watching them exchange vows. He'd never had this. After the ceremony, guests moved to the reception tent. Elsie checked the seating chart and frowned slightly. "Looks like we're at different tables," she said. "You're at table 12. I'm at 15. "That's fine. You go have fun with your friends." She kissed his cheek and disappeared into the crowd, leaving him alone. Table 12 was in the back corner of the tent, partially hidden behind a decorative column. Roland found his place card and sat down, grateful for the relative obscurity. He sat quietly, hands folded in his lap, watching the celebration unfold around him. He felt invisible. Not in a bad way, necessarily, just factual. He could observe without participating, which felt safer somehow. The meal was served, multiple courses that were as beautiful as they were delicious. Roland ate slowly, savoring flavors he'd never experienced before. As dinner concluded and the dancing began, Roland felt the familiar weight of loneliness settle over him. He watched couples move onto the dance floor, young couples swaying and laughing, older couples moving with the practiced ease of decades together. He'd never been much of a dancer. As the reception began to wind down, Roland checked his watch. Nearly 10 o'clock. He stood, thinking he might step outside for some fresh air. That's when he saw her. She was standing near the edge of the dance floor, holding a glass of champagne. Her dress was elegant but simple, deep blue, understated. She had dark hair pulled back loosely, and even from across the tent. There was something quietly magnetic about her presence. She turned, and for just a moment, their eyes met across the crowded space. She smiled. Roland felt his breath catch, then immediately looked away, certain she'd been looking at someone behind him. People like her didn't smile at people like him. He moved toward the exit, needing air, his heart beating faster than it had any right to. Roland stepped out onto the terrace, grateful for the cool evening air against his face. The sounds of the reception faded to a pleasant hum behind him. He walked to the stone railing and looked out over the gardens, now lit by carefully placed lanterns that created pools of warm light among the shadows. He breathed deeply, trying to settle the unexpected flutter in his chest. It was foolish, really, getting flustered by a smile that probably wasn't even meant for him. He was too old for such nonsense, too practical. Yet something about that brief moment had unsettled him in a way he couldn't quite name. Beautiful view, isn't it? Roland turned, startled. The woman in the blue dress stood a few feet away, that same gentle smile on her face. Up close, she was even more striking. Fine lines around her eyes that spoke of a life well lived, an elegance that seemed effortless. "Yes," he managed. "Very beautiful." She moved to the railing beside him, maintaining a respectful distance. "I needed some air." "These events can be overwhelming." "They can," Roland agreed, unsure what else to say. She wore simple pearl earrings that caught the lantern light. No other jewelry, no ostentatious display. Just those pearls, and the quiet confidence of someone comfortable in her own skin. "I'm Celeste," she said, extending her hand. "Roland." Her hand was soft, but her grip was firm. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, both looking out at the gardens. Roland felt he should say something, make conversation, but his mind had gone blank. It had been so long since he'd talked to a woman like this, socially, without the buffer of work or parental duties. "Are you with the bride or groom?" Celeste asked. "Neither, really. My daughter's friend is in the wedding party." I'm just the plus one. He gave a self-deprecating smile. Somewhat reluctantly, if I'm honest. I understand that feeling. She took a small sip of her champagne. I'm a distant relation of the groom's family. So distant I had to check the family tree to figure out exactly how we're connected. Roland found himself relaxing slightly. That makes two of us feeling out of place then. Perhaps that's why I noticed you, Celeste said quietly. You had the same look I imagine I do, present but not quite part of it all. She'd noticed him. The thought sent another unexpected flutter through his chest. I tend to keep to myself at these things, Roland admitted. I'm not much for small talk or crowds. Neither am I, truly. Celeste turned to look at him directly. Though I've gotten better at pretending over the years, there was something in her voice, a hint of weariness, of wearing masks for so long they'd become second nature. Roland recognized it because he wore his own masks every day. The capable worker, the devoted father, the man who had everything under control even when he didn't. Before he could respond, laughter erupted from inside the tent. They both glanced back to see a group of guests gathering for what looked like another round of toasts. Celeste sighed softly. I suppose we should head back in. I suppose so. But neither of them moved. Roland, Celeste said after a moment, her voice quieter now. I'm going to ask you something unusual, and please feel free to say no. He looked at her. Curious and slightly apprehensive. I've been at this wedding for 3 hours, and in that time I've been approached by no fewer than 7 different men, each trying to impress me or make connections or... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Let's just say their interest felt transactional rather than genuine. Roland wasn't surprised. A woman like her would naturally attract attention. I'd like to enjoy the rest of the evening without those interruptions, she continued. And I noticed you seemed content in your solitude, which I respect and understand. But I thought perhaps... She met his eyes directly. Would you be willing to pretend we're together? Just for tonight. It would give me a reprieve, and you wouldn't have to sit alone at your table. We could keep each other company, 2 outsiders navigating this together. Roland stared at her, certain he'd misheard. You want to pretend we're a couple? I know it sounds strange, but I've found that appearing attached is the most effective way to deflect unwanted attention. And you seem kind, safe, she smiled. Plus, you admitted you're reluctantly here anyway. At least this way you'd have someone to talk to. He should say no. This was absurd, something from a movie, not real life. Women who looked like Celeste didn't approach men like him with propositions, even innocent ones. But there was something genuine in her expression, a vulnerability beneath the composed exterior. She was asking for help in her own way. And when had Roland ever been able to turn away someone who needed help? All right, he heard himself say. I can do that. Her face brightened with relief and genuine pleasure. Thank you, truly. She held out her arm. Shall we? Roland offered his elbow, and she slipped her hand into the crook of his arm. The contact felt foreign and electric all at once. Together they walked back into the reception tent. The change was immediate. As they entered, several heads turned. Roland felt eyes on them, assessing, curious. Celeste moved close to his side, creating the image of intimacy without discomfort. Where were you sitting? She asked softly. Table 12. Back corner? Perfect, private. They made their way through the crowd. Roland was acutely aware of her hand on his arm, the subtle scent of her perfume, the way people parted to let them pass. He'd been invisible earlier. Now, with her beside him, he felt seen, and it was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. At the table, he pulled out a chair for her. She sat gracefully, and he took the seat beside her. The other guests at the table, the Hendersons, Beverly, the 2 young men, looked up with renewed interest. Oh, Beverly said, eyes widening slightly. I didn't realize you were with someone. Celeste, she introduced herself warmly, shaking hands around the table. I'm so sorry I'm late joining you all. I was catching up with some family. The lie came easily to her, natural as breathing. The others accepted it without question, and just like that, they were a couple in everyone's eyes. A waiter appeared. Can I get you anything, miss? Just water, please, Celeste said. I've had enough champagne for one evening. As the waiter left, she turned to Roland with a conspiratorial smile. So tell me about yourself. If we're going to be a convincing couple, I should probably know more than just your name. He found himself smiling back despite his nerves. What would you like to know? Everything, she said simply. Start anywhere, so he did. Tentatively at first, then with growing ease. He told her about Elsie, about raising her alone, about his work. He kept it simple, not dwelling on the hardships or the lonely nights. But Celeste listened with genuine attention, asking questions that showed she was truly interested. Your daughter is lucky to have you, she said at one point. A father who sacrificed so much to give her a better life. I just did what any parent would do. No, Celeste said firmly but gently. Not any parent. A good parent. There's a difference. The sincerity in her voice touched something deep in Roland's chest. When had someone last acknowledged what he'd done? When had anyone looked at his life and seen value rather than just a man getting by? What about you? He asked, deflecting from his own discomfort with praise. What do you do? I work in business, she said, a practiced vagueness to her tone. Investments, property management, that sort of thing. It keeps me busy and traveling quite a bit. That sounds interesting. It can be. Though honestly, most days it's just meetings and paperwork. Nothing glamorous. She smiled. I'd rather hear more about you. What do you do when you're not working? Hobbies, interests? Roland realized he didn't have a good answer. His life had been work, and Elsie for so long, there hadn't been room for much else. I used to enjoy woodworking, he said slowly, remembering. Building things with my hands. But I haven't had time for that in years. You should make time, Celeste said. Life's too short to give up to things that bring us joy. Before he could respond, music swelled from the band. The dance floor began to fill again. Celeste glanced at the dancing couples, then back at Roland. I don't suppose, she hesitated. Would you like to dance? We should probably sell this charade properly. Roland felt his stomach drop. I'm not much of a dancer. Neither am I, truly. But we can shuffle around and pretend, can't we? There was a playfulness in her eyes that he found himself unable to resist. He stood and offered his hand. I apologize in advance for any stepped-on toes. I'll take that risk. They moved to the edge of the dance floor. The band was playing something slow and gentle. Roland placed his hand carefully on Celeste's waist, feeling awkward and uncertain. She rested her hand on his shoulder, and they began to move. He was stiff at first, counting steps in his head, trying not to trip. But Celeste was patient, following his lead even when he faltered. Gradually he stopped thinking so hard and just moved with the music. See? She said softly. You're doing fine. I think you're just being kind. No, I mean it. You're doing better than half the people out here. He looked around and realized she was right. There were others who were just shuffling, holding each other and swaying. It wasn't about skill. It was about connection. May I ask you something? Roland said, of course. Why me? You could have asked anyone to help you with this. Celeste was quiet for a moment, considering. Honestly? Because when I saw you sitting alone, you looked the way I felt, like you were watching life happen around you rather than participating in it. And I thought maybe we could help each other participate just for one night. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to him in a long time. They danced through 2 more songs. Other couples moved around them, but Roland barely noticed. He was focused on the woman in his arms, on the unexpected gift of this strange, perfect moment. When they returned to the table, Roland felt different somehow, lighter, more present. Across the tent he spotted Elsie watching them. Her eyes were wide with surprise and was that delight. She caught his gaze and gave him an enthusiastic thumbs up. He felt heat rise to his face, but couldn't help smiling. Your daughter? Celeste asked, following his gaze. Yes, she looks shocked. In a good way, I hope? I think so. As the evening progressed, Roland found himself relaxing more than he had in years. He and Celeste talked about everything and nothing, books they'd read, places they'd like to visit someday, small observations about the wedding and its guests. She had a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard and made him laugh. When a particularly pompous man approached their table, Clearly intent on speaking with Celeste, Roland instinctively reached over and took her hand. The man noticed, smiled tightly, and moved on. "Thank you," Celeste whispered. "Any time." By the time the reception began winding down, Roland had almost forgotten this was pretend. It felt real, the conversation, the laughter, the comfortable silences. It felt like something he'd been missing without knowing it. As guests began gathering their things and saying goodbyes, Celeste turned to him. "Roland, I want to thank you. This evening was, well, it was lovely. You made what could have been tedious into something genuinely pleasant. I should be thanking you," he said. "I came here tonight expecting to sit alone and count the minutes until I could leave. Instead," he paused, searching for words, "instead I had one of the nicest evenings I can remember." She smiled, and there was something wistful in it. "Would you like to walk me to my car?" "I'd be happy to." They made their way out of the tent into the cool night air. The parking lot was half empty now, guests departing in clusters. Celeste led him to a sleek sedan, nice but not ostentatious. She unlocked it but didn't immediately get in. "Roland," she said softly, "I know this was supposed to be pretend, but I want you to know, the conversation, getting to know you, that part was real for me." His heart was racing. "It was real for me too." She reached into her small purse and pulled out a pen, then took his hand gently and wrote a phone number on his palm. "If you'd like to see me again, without the pretense this time, call me." She met his eyes. "No pressure, but I'd like that very much." Roland stared at the numbers on his palm, barely visible in the parking lot lights. "You're serious." "Completely." "I don't understand why—" he started, but she placed a finger gently on his lips. "Because tonight, you treated me like a person, not a commodity. Because you made me laugh. Because I haven't enjoyed someone's company this much in longer than I care to admit." She lowered her hand. "Is that reason enough?" It should have been, but doubt still gnawed at him, the old familiar voice saying this was too good to be true. "Call me," she said again, opening her car door. "Please?" Then she was gone, driving away into the night, leaving Roland standing in the parking lot with a phone number on his palm and a feeling in his chest he hadn't felt in decades. Roland sat at his kitchen table 3 days later, staring at the napkin where he'd carefully copied Celeste's phone number. He'd transferred it from his palm that same night, not wanting to risk the numbers fading or smudging. The napkin sat beside his morning coffee, a quiet reproach to his cowardice. 3 days, 72 hours of picking up the phone and setting it down again, of dialing the first 3 digits and then disconnecting, of crafting and discarding mental scripts of what he might say. The morning sun streamed through his small kitchen window, dust motes dancing in the light. His shift at the warehouse started in an hour, but he couldn't seem to move. He just sat there, coffee growing cold, staring at 10 digits that felt like a bridge to another world. What would he even say? "Hello? This is the poor single father you took pity on at the wedding?" The thought made him wince. His phone buzzed. "Elsie, did you call her yet?" The text was direct, no preamble. Roland typed back, "How do you know there's a her to call?" 3 dots appeared immediately, then, "Dad, I saw you two together. I saw the way you smiled. I haven't seen you smile like that since ever, maybe. So did you call her?" He set the phone down without responding. Elsie knew him too well. Another buzz. "You're afraid, I get it. But you deserve this. You deserve someone who makes you smile like that. Call her." Roland picked up the napkin, held it up to the light, as if the numbers might reveal some hidden message, some assurance that this wasn't a terrible mistake waiting to happen. His ex-wife's voice echoed in his memory. Those final cutting words before she left. "You're too boring, Roland. Too simple. You'll never be enough for anyone who wants more from life." 22 years, and those words still had power over him. But then he remembered Celeste's smile. The way she'd listened when he talked about Elsie, about his work, about the small details of his life. The way she'd said, "You made me laugh," as if that was something precious, before he could talk himself out of it again. Roland picked up his phone and dialed. It rang once, twice. On the 3rd ring, he almost hung up. Then, "Hello?" her voice warm and slightly breathless, as if she'd rushed to answer. "Celeste, this is Roland. From the wedding." His voice came out steadier than he felt. "Roland." He could hear the smile in her voice. "I was hoping you'd call. Were you?" He couldn't keep the surprise from his tone. "I wasn't sure. I thought maybe... You thought maybe I was just being polite." "It wasn't a question. Something like that. I don't give my number to people I'm just being polite to," Celeste said gently. "I gave it to you because I meant what I said. I'd like to see you again." Roland felt his shoulders relax. Tension he hadn't realized he was carrying releasing. "I'd like that too. Are you free this Saturday? Maybe we could meet for coffee? Something simple. Coffee sounds perfect." Then, because he needed to be honest, "I should tell you I don't have a lot of experience with this. Dating, I mean. It's been a very long time." "For me too," Celeste said quietly. "We'll figure it out together. No expectations, no pressure. Just coffee and conversation." They made plans to meet at a small cafe downtown, a place called the Daily Grind, that Roland passed on his way to his security job, but had never been inside. Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. When he hung up, Roland realized his hands were shaking. But it was a good kind of shaking. The kind that came from stepping off a cliff and discovering you could fly. The next 3 days passed in a blur of nervous anticipation. Roland found himself distracted at work, catching himself smiling at random moments. His co-workers noticed. "You win the lottery or something?" Pete asked, grinning. "Something like that," Roland replied. Saturday morning he woke early despite having stayed up late at his security shift. He showered, shaved carefully, and stood in front of his closet trying to decide what to wear. Most of his clothes were work clothes, functional, worn, nothing special. He settled on his best jeans and a button-down shirt Elsie had given him last Christmas, still crisp because he'd rarely had occasion to wear it. Elsie called at noon. "Big date today, right?" "How did you—" "Dad, you're terrible at keeping secrets. You've been walking around like a teenager for 3 days," he laughed despite himself. "Is it that obvious?" "Completely." "Where are you taking her?" "The Daily Grind, just coffee, perfect. Simple, casual, public, so there's no pressure." "Good choice. I didn't really choose it," she suggested. "Dad," Elsie's voice turned serious. "Stop second-guessing everything." "She asked to see you again. She gave you her number. She wants to be there. Just be yourself, okay? That's who she liked at the wedding. What if myself isn't enough?" The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Roland thought the connection had dropped. Then Elsie spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "Dad, you raised me by yourself while working 3 jobs. You never missed a parent-teacher conference or a school play. You taught me what real love looks like, the kind that shows up day after day, even when it's hard, even when you're exhausted. If that's not enough for her, then she's not the right person. But I think she is. I saw the way she looked at you." Roland's throat tightened. "Thank you, sweetheart. Go get ready. And Dad, have fun. Remember what that feels like." He arrived at the Daily Grind 15 minutes early, then walked around the block twice to avoid looking too eager. When he finally entered at exactly 2 o'clock, the cafe was moderately busy with the Saturday afternoon crowd. Small tables dotted the space, the air rich with the scent of coffee and fresh pastries. Celeste was already there, seated at a corner table, and Roland's breath caught. She wore simple jeans and a cream-colored sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. No fancy dress, no formal makeup, just herself. Natural and beautiful. She looked up as he approached, and her face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Hi," she said, standing. "Hi." He felt suddenly awkward, unsure if he should hug her, shake her hand, or just sit down. She solved the problem by stepping forward and embracing him briefly, a warm welcome that felt neither too intimate nor too distant. She smelled like vanilla and something floral. "I already ordered," she said as they sat. "Hope you don't mind. I was a little nervous and needed something to do with my hands." "You were nervous?" The admission surprised him. Of course. First dates are always nerve-wracking, aren't they? The word date sent a small thrill through him. This was real. This was happening. A barista brought over 2 coffees. "Black, right?" Celeste said. "I took a guess based on the wedding." Perfect. He was touched that she'd remembered, had paid attention to such a small detail. They sat for a moment, both holding their cups, smiling at each other with the slightly awkward awareness of new connection. "So," Celeste said, "tell me about your week." It was such a simple question, but Roland found himself relaxing into it. He told her about work, about a complicated shipment that had arrived wrong and taken hours to sort out, about Mrs. Chen's cat getting stuck in a tree and how he and Mr. Kowalski had rescued it with a ladder and some patience. Small stories, ordinary moments from an ordinary life, but Celeste listened as if every word mattered. She asked questions, laughed at his descriptions of the warehouse supervisor's creative cursing, sympathized with his frustration over the late-night cat rescue. "Your turn," Roland said. "Tell me about your week." Celeste's expression shifted slightly, became more guarded. "Meetings, mostly. I had to fly to Seattle for a few days. Business matters that needed attention. Seattle's supposed to be beautiful. I'm sure it is. I saw mostly hotel conference rooms and my laptop screen." She smiled ruefully. "Not exactly glamorous. What kind of business are you in exactly?" "Property management and investments. It's complicated and honestly quite boring. I'd much rather talk about something else." She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about Elsie. How does it feel now that she's grown and starting her own life?" The deflection was smooth, but Roland noticed it. There was something she wasn't saying about her work, some detail she was keeping to herself. But he understood the need for privacy, for keeping certain parts of yourself protected until you knew someone better. So he told her about Elsie instead, about the pride he felt watching her succeed, mixed with the bittersweet recognition that she didn't need him the way she once had. "That's the goal, isn't it?" Celeste said softly. "To raise them to fly. But it doesn't make watching them go any easier. You sound like you understand that. Do you have children?" "No." Something flickered across her face. Regret, perhaps, or old grief. "I've never been married, never had that opportunity. It's one of my few regrets in life." "There's still time," Roland offered. "Maybe, though I've learned that some paths close while others open. The key is appreciating the path you're on." She met his eyes. "Which is why I'm grateful to be sitting here with you right now." The directness of it, the sincerity, made Roland's heart race. They talked for 2 hours. The conversation flowed from topic to topic, books they'd read, movies they'd seen, childhood memories and dreams deferred. Celeste mentioned loving art museums, but rarely having time to visit them. Roland admitted he'd never been to one, but would like to try. "Then we should go together," Celeste said. "There's a wonderful exhibit at the Riverside Museum right now. Modern landscapes. I'd like that." When the cafe began to close for the day, they realized with surprise how much time had passed. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast everything in golden light. They stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready for the afternoon to end. "Can I walk you to your car?" Roland asked. "I'd like that." They walked slowly through the downtown streets. The city was alive with weekend energy. Families out for early dinners, couples window shopping, street musicians playing for spare change. Roland felt part of it all in a way he usually didn't, as if Celeste's presence had opened a door to a version of life he'd been watching from outside. At her car, they paused. "I had a wonderful time," Celeste said. "So did I." Roland hesitated, then decided to be brave. "Could we do this again? Maybe next weekend?" "I'd love to. Though," she bit her lip, "I have to travel again for work next week. I won't be back until the following Saturday." "Could we plan for then?" "Of course. Whatever works for you. Thank you for understanding. My job requires a lot of travel sometimes. It can be—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "It can make relationships difficult." "I work 3 jobs, Roland said. "I understand difficult schedules," she smiled, relieved. "Then we'll make it work." On impulse, Roland reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, wrapped package. "I brought you something." "It's not much, just—" He handed it to her. She unwrapped it carefully to reveal a bouquet of flowers he'd picked up at the supermarket that morning. They were simple, inexpensive, daisies and carnations, nothing exotic. Celeste's eyes glistened. "They're beautiful." "They're from a grocery store," Roland said, embarrassed. I wanted to bring you something, but I wasn't sure what would be appropriate, and Roland. She held the flowers to her chest. They're perfect. No one's brought me flowers in years. These are perfect. She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, a brief touch that left warmth spreading across his skin. Call me this week, she asked. I will. He watched her drive away, her flowers on the passenger seat beside her, and felt something shift in his chest. Hope, maybe, or possibility. Whatever it was, it felt like waking up after a long sleep. The week passed slowly. Roland threw himself into work, but his mind kept drifting to Celeste. He called her Tuesday evening just to say hello. She sounded tired but happy to hear from him, apologizing for the exhaustion in her voice. Long day of meetings, she explained. Sometimes I forget what time zone I'm in. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing important, the weather, a funny incident at his warehouse, a restaurant she'd tried in Seattle. Small talk that felt significant simply because they were sharing it. I'm looking forward to Saturday, she said before they hung up. Me too. Thursday night. As Roland finished his security shift, his phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. Still good for Saturday? I'd land Friday evening. Absolutely, he typed back. Looking forward to it. 3 dots appeared, then, me too. More than you know. Saturday arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures. They'd agreed to meet at the Riverside Museum at 11. Roland arrived early again, standing outside the modern building with its glass facade and feeling decidedly out of place. The other patrons looked cultured, educated, the kind of people who knew how to appreciate art rather than just look at it. You made it. Celeste appeared beside him, dressed casually in slacks and a light jacket. She looked more rested than she'd sounded on the phone, her smile bright and genuine. I did. Though I should warn you, I know absolutely nothing about art. Neither do I, really. I just enjoy looking at beautiful things and deciding what I like. She linked her arm through his. Come on, let's explore. The museum was quiet, reverent. Their footsteps echoed on the polished floors as they moved through the galleries. The modern landscape exhibit featured paintings of mountains, forests, and coastlines, rendered in bold colors and unexpected perspectives. Roland found himself surprisingly engaged. Not by the technical skill, he couldn't judge that, but by the emotions the paintings evoked. A stormy seascape made him feel small and awed. A sunrise over wheat fields reminded him of his childhood, visiting his grandparents' farm. What do you think of this one? Celeste asked, stopping before a large canvas showing a forest at twilight, trees rendered in deep blues and purples. It's peaceful, Roland said. Makes me want to walk into it, see what's beyond those trees. Exactly, she smiled. That's what I love about art. It takes you somewhere else, even if just in your imagination. They spent 2 hours wandering the galleries, discussing paintings, sharing reactions. Roland noticed that Celeste never mentioned prices or value, just whether she connected with a piece or not. Her appreciation seemed genuine, unpretentious. In the museum cafe afterward, they shared coffee and pastries. Thank you for suggesting this, Roland said. I never would have come here on my own. Why not? He shrugged. Didn't seem like a place for someone like me. Someone like you. Celeste's tone sharpened slightly. What does that mean? Roland felt heat rise to his face. I just mean I'm a warehouse worker. Museums are for people with education, culture. People who understand these things, Roland. Celeste reached across the table and took his hand. Museums are for everyone. Art is for everyone. Don't ever think you don't belong somewhere because of your job or your education level. Her grip tightened. You appreciated those paintings as much as anyone in there. Your reactions were honest and thoughtful. That's what matters. He looked down at their joined hands, moved by her fierce defense of him. You're right. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just promise me you won't sell yourself short. She softened. You have so much to offer, Roland. I wish you could see that. They left the museum hand in hand, walking through the nearby park. The afternoon was beautiful. Families out enjoying the weather, couples strolling along the paths. Tell me about your family, Roland said. You mentioned you're not close with them? Celeste's expression shifted, became more guarded. My parents are both gone now. They passed a few years ago. We weren't particularly close when they were alive. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was complicated. She paused by a bench and they sat. They were very focused on success, achievement, status. Love was conditional, I suppose, based on what you accomplished, not who you were. Roland heard the pain beneath the carefully neutral words. That must have been lonely. It was. Still is sometimes. She looked at him. That's why this being with you feels different. You don't want anything from me except my company. Do you know how rare that is? He didn't fully understand what she meant, but he heard the vulnerability in her voice. I like spending time with you, he said simply. You make me feel, I don't know, like maybe I've been living my life too small. Like there might be more out there than just work and responsibility. There is more. We just have to be brave enough to reach for it. They sat in comfortable silence, watching children play on the nearby playground. An elderly couple walked past, holding hands, and Roland felt a pang of longing. Would he and Celeste ever be that, comfortable together after years of shared life? The thought both thrilled and terrified him. Roland, Celeste said quietly. Can I ask you something? Of course. What happened with Elsie's mother? You mentioned she left when Elsie was young, but you didn't say much more. Roland took a deep breath. It wasn't a story he enjoyed telling. But if this relationship was going to progress, she deserved to know. Her name was Linda. We met when I was 29, married 6 months later. I thought we wanted the same things, a family, a simple life, building something together. He stared at his hands. But after Elsie was born, Linda became restless. She'd wanted to travel, have adventures, live a more exciting life. I was working 2 jobs by then, trying to provide. It wasn't enough. That wasn't your fault. Maybe not. But the thing she said when she left. He paused, the old wound still tender. She said I was boring, too simple, that I'd never be enough for anyone who wanted more from life than mediocrity. Celeste's hand tightened on his. She was wrong, was she? Look at my life, Celeste. I live in a small apartment, work 3 jobs just to get by. I've never traveled, never done anything remarkable. Maybe she was right. Stop! Celeste's voice was firm. You raised a daughter alone while working multiple jobs. You gave her opportunities, love, stability. You sacrificed your own dreams to ensure hers could come true. That's not mediocrity, Roland. That's heroism in its truest form. He looked at her, surprised by the passion in her voice. I've known people with all the money and opportunity in the world who've accomplished far less than you have, she continued. Success isn't measured in bank accounts or exotic vacations. It's measured in lives touched, in love given freely, in showing up day after day, even when it's hard. Roland felt something break open in his chest, a wall he'd built around himself beginning to crumble. Thank you, he whispered. She leaned her head against his shoulder. You don't have to thank me for seeing the truth. They stayed like that for a long while. 2 people finding comfort in each other's presence. As the afternoon stretched toward evening, they walked back toward the museum parking lot. The day had been perfect, easy, comfortable, real, in a way Roland had almost forgotten relationships could be. Would you like to have dinner sometime this week? Celeste asked as they reached her car. Nothing fancy, just maybe a casual place where we can talk more? I'd love that. Though I should warn you, my schedule is complicated. Between the 3 jobs, we'll make it work. Tuesday evening, I should be in town all week. Tuesday is perfect. She reached up and touched his face gently, her fingers warm against his cheek. I'm really glad you called me, Roland. So am I. This time when she kissed his cheek, she let her lips linger a moment longer. Roland's heart raced, and he found himself hoping their next date might end with a real kiss, the kind that meant something. As he drove home, Roland felt lighter than he had in years. The world seemed full of possibility, the future less predetermined. For so long he'd accepted his life as fixed, unchangeable. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. But Celeste was showing him there could be more. His phone rang. Elsie, how was the date? Roland couldn't help smiling. It was wonderful. I can hear it in your voice. You sound happy, Dad. I am. Is that allowed? It's required. He could hear her own smile through the phone. I want to meet her properly. Can you bring her to dinner at my place next weekend? Nothing formal, just the 3 of us? The invitation touched him deeply. Elsie wanting to include Celeste in their small family circle felt significant. I'll ask her. But sweetheart, this is all very new. I know. But I also know you, Dad. You don't let people in easily. If you're spending time with her, if you're this happy, then she's special. I want to know her. After they hung up, Roland sat in his parked car outside his apartment building, just absorbing the day. The museum, the park, the conversations that had ranged from light to deep and back again. Celeste's hand in his, her fierce defense of his worth, the way she made him feel seen and valued. He looked at his father's watch, the leather strap worn soft with age. I think I'm falling in love, he whispered to the empty car. Is that crazy? At my age, after all this time? The watch ticked steadily, marking the passage of moments that suddenly felt precious rather than merely endured. Tuesday evening, they met at a small Italian restaurant in a neighborhood halfway between both their homes. The place was family-run, checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. The kind of establishment that survived on quality food and word of mouth rather than trendy marketing. Celeste arrived wearing a simple dress, her hair pulled back, and Roland thought she'd never looked more beautiful. Over pasta and garlic bread, they continued the conversation that seemed to have no end. Celeste told him about a business deal that had gone wrong, her frustration evident but carefully vague on details. Roland shared a story about a mishap at the warehouse that had resulted in 300 boxes of cereal being stacked in the wrong loading bay. We spent half the day moving them one by one, he said, laughing. Pete was cursing in languages I don't think actually exist. Celeste laughed too, that genuine, unguarded laugh he was coming to treasure. I have a question, Roland said as their plates were cleared. And you can say no, but Elsie wants to meet you properly. She's invited us both to dinner at her place next Saturday. Would you be comfortable with that? Celeste's eyes widened slightly. Meeting your daughter officially. That's a big step. It is. And I'll understand if it's too soon. If you'd rather wait, I'd love to, Celeste interrupted. I'm honored that you'd want me to meet her. She's the most important person in my life. If this, he gestured between them, if this is going to be something real, then she should know you. This is real for me, Roland. Celeste reached across the table. Is it real for you? He took her hand. Yes, very real. Then I'd be happy to meet Elsie. Outside the restaurant, under the glow of streetlights, Roland found the courage he'd been building all evening. As they said goodnight, he cupped Celeste's face gently in his hands. Can I kiss you? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Her answer was to lean in and close the distance between them. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, then deeper as they both relaxed into it. Roland felt the world narrow to just this moment, her lips on his, her hand resting over his heart, the rightness of it all settling into his bones. When they pulled apart, both were breathing harder. I've been wanting to do that since the wedding, Roland admitted. Me too. They stood there, foreheads touching, smiling like teenagers who just discovered something wonderful. I'll see you Saturday, Celeste said. I'll count the days. He watched her drive away, his lips still tingling from the kiss, his heart full in a way it hadn't been in more than 2 decades. Whatever this was, wherever it was going, Roland knew he was in it completely. The next few weeks unfolded like a dream Roland was afraid to wake from. He and Celeste fell into a comfortable rhythm of seeing each other 2 or 3 times a week, working around his demanding schedule and her frequent business trips. Their dates were simple: walks in the park, coffee at the Daily Grind, a free concert in the community amphitheater, where they sat on the grass with hundreds of other people and listened to a local orchestra play classical pieces under the stars. Roland had kept the ticket stub from that concert in his wallet, a small reminder that good things were happening in his life. Celeste seemed to genuinely enjoy these modest outings. She never suggested expensive restaurants or activities that would strain his budget. When he mentioned feeling guilty that he couldn't take her anywhere fancy, she touched his face gently and said, Roland, I don't need fancy. I need real. And this is the most real thing I've had in my life. The dinner with Elsie had gone better than Roland could have hoped. His daughter had welcomed Celeste warmly, and the two women had hit it off immediately. Watching them laugh together over Elsie's stories about his terrible cooking attempts when she was young, Roland had felt a profound sense of rightness. The two most important women in his life, connecting, after Celeste left that evening. Elsie had pulled him into a tight hug. "Don't let this one go. Dad, she's special. I know she is. And she looks at you like you hung the moon. I've never seen anyone look at you like that." Now, sitting at his kitchen table on a Wednesday morning before his warehouse shift, Roland allowed himself to feel the full weight of his happiness. For the first time in decades, he was building something for himself, not just for Elsie, something that made him wake up with anticipation rather than resignation. His phone rang. "Celeste, good morning," he answered, smiling. "Good morning." Her voice sounded strained. "Roland, I'm so sorry, but I have to cancel our dinner plans for Friday. Something's come up with work, a crisis that needs my immediate attention. Is everything okay?" "Yes, just complicated. I may need to fly to Boston tomorrow," she sighed. "I'm really sorry. I was looking forward to seeing you." "Don't apologize. Work is important. We can reschedule. You're too understanding, I get it. Responsibilities come first sometimes." After they hung up, Roland felt a small twist of disappointment, but pushed it aside. She had a demanding career. That was just reality. But over the next 2 weeks, it happened 3 more times. Cancelled plans, last-minute trips, apologies delivered with genuine regret, but cancellations nonetheless. Roland told himself it was fine, that this was the nature of her work, but a small voice in the back of his mind, Linda's voice, cruel and persistent, whispered that maybe Celeste was pulling away. Maybe she'd realized what Linda had, that he wasn't enough. He hated that voice, hated that after all these years, his ex-wife's words still had power over him. On a Sunday afternoon, during one of Celeste's rare free days, they took a long walk through the riverside park. The autumn air was crisp, leaves turning gold and red on the trees. They walked hand in hand, comfortable in each other's presence. "I have to travel again next week," Celeste said quietly. "London this time. I'll be gone for 5 days. That's a long trip, I know. And I hate it. I'd much rather be here with you." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Roland, I need you to know, this job, the travel, it's not what I want. But right now it's necessary. I understand. Everyone has obligations. Do you? Really?" She searched his face. "Because I worry sometimes that you think I'm making excuses, that I'm not as invested in this as you are." Roland considered lying, brushing off her concerns. But they'd built this relationship on honesty. "Sometimes I wonder," he admitted. "Not because I don't trust you, but because—" He struggled to find the words. "I've been left before, Celeste, for not being enough. And when you cancel plans, when you're gone for days at a time, that old fear creeps in." Celeste's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not Linda. I'm not leaving you. I know that up here." He tapped his head. "But getting my heart to believe it is harder." She pulled him close, her arms tight around him. "I'm falling in love with you, Roland. These trips, these cancellations, they kill me. Every time I have to get on a plane instead of being with you, it feels wrong. But I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you want me to. I don't want you to go anywhere," he whispered into her hair. "I'm falling in love with you too." They stood there in the middle of the path, holding each other while joggers and cyclists passed around them. When they finally pulled apart, both had tears on their faces. "When I get back from London, let's go away for a weekend," Celeste said. "Just the two of us. Somewhere quiet, where we can focus on each other without interruptions." "I'd like that. Though I'll need to arrange time off work. I'll cover it. Please let me do this for you." Roland wanted to protest, to insist on paying his own way. But he saw how important this was to her, how much he needed to do something tangible to show her commitment. "Okay," he agreed. "Thank you." They spent the rest of the afternoon together, stopping for ice cream like teenagers, sitting on a bench watching ducks on the pond. Simple moments that felt precious because they were together. That evening, back at his apartment, Roland's landlord knocked on the door with unwelcome news. "I'm sorry, Roland, but I'm raising the rent. Building costs are up, property taxes increased. I've held off as long as I could, but starting next month it's going up by $200. $200. Roland's stomach sank. He was already stretched thin across 3 jobs, barely saving anything after expenses. An extra $200 a month meant he'd have to pick up more hours or cut back somewhere else. I understand, he said, because what else could he say? Thanks for letting me know. After the landlord left, Roland sat on his worn couch and stared at the financial planning folder he kept in his desk drawer. He pulled it out, reviewed the careful budget he maintained. Cut cable, already didn't have it. Reduce groceries, already buying generic brands and cooking simple meals. Take on more shifts, already working close to 70 hours a week. The math didn't work. He could ask Celeste for advice. She worked in investments, property management. She'd probably have suggestions. But pride held him back. She already seemed so far above him in so many ways. Admitting he was struggling to make rent felt like confirming every doubt he already had about their mismatch. No, he'd figure this out himself. He always did. The next day at the warehouse, Roland asked Pete if there were any extra shifts available. You already work more than anyone here, Pete said, concerned. You trying to kill yourself? Just need a bit more income. Rent's going up, Pete nodded sympathetically. I'll see what I can do. Maybe some weekend overtime when shipments are heavy. At his security job that night, Roland found himself daydreaming during the quiet hours, imagining a life where money wasn't a constant worry, where he could take Celeste to a nice restaurant without mentally calculating whether he'd have enough for bus fare the rest of the week, where a rent increase didn't send him into a spiral of anxiety. But that wasn't his life, and probably never would be. His phone buzzed. A text from Celeste, missing you. Counting days until London trip is over. He typed back, missing you too. Stay safe. 3 dots appeared, then, I wish you could come with me. Show you the city, spend real time together. Roland looked at the text, at the impossibility of it. Take time off from 3 jobs? Afford a plane ticket to London? It might as well be the moon. Someday, he typed, though he didn't believe it. The following week passed slowly without Celeste. They talked on the phone when her schedule allowed, the time difference making connections difficult. Roland threw himself into work, picking up the extra shifts Pete had found, pushing his body to its limits. On Wednesday, during his warehouse shift, he made a mistake. Distracted by exhaustion, he miscalculated the weight distribution on a pallet. When the forklift lifted it, boxes shifted and tumbled, hundreds of dollars of merchandise hitting the concrete floor. Roland! Pete rushed over. You okay? I'm fine. I'm sorry, He stared at the damaged goods, horrified. I'll pay for it. Take it out of my check. Accidents happen. Don't worry about it. But man, you look dead on your feet. When's the last time you slept a full night? Roland couldn't remember. Go home early today, Pete said firmly. Get some rest. I mean it. Roland wanted to argue, but knew Pete was right. He was running himself into the ground. At home, he collapsed onto his bed fully clothed and slept for 12 hours straight. He woke to 17 missed calls. Panic seized him until he saw they were all from Celeste. He called her back immediately. Roland! Thank God. I was about to call the police. You never answered. You always answer. I'm sorry. I was sleeping. Worked a long shift and just crashed. Are you okay? You sound exhausted. I'm fine. Just tired. You're working too hard. Concern filled her voice. Roland, please take care of yourself. I need you healthy and whole. I will. I promise. But after they hung up, Roland looked around his small apartment. The water stain on the ceiling he couldn't afford to fix. The furniture he'd bought second-hand years ago. The careful budget that never quite stretched far enough. And he wondered how long someone like Celeste would be satisfied with someone like him. The doubts crept in like shadows, whispering that this happiness was temporary, that eventually she'd see what Linda had seen, a simple man leading a simple life, unable to provide anything extraordinary. When Celeste returned from London, they met at their usual cafe. She looked tired from travel, but lit up when she saw him. They embraced, and Roland breathed in her familiar scent, letting himself believe just for a moment that everything would be okay. I missed you so much, she said against his shoulder. I missed you too. They sat, hands linked across the table, just looking at each other. Tell me everything, Roland said. How was London? Celeste talked about meetings, about walking through Hyde Park early one morning, about fish and chips that were surprisingly good. But there was something in her voice, a careful editing, details kept vague. You never really talk about your work, Roland observed gently. Not specifically, she tensed slightly. It's complicated and honestly quite boring. Contracts and negotiations and legal details that would put you to sleep. I wouldn't be bored. I like hearing about your life, all of it. I know, and I appreciate that. But can we talk about something else? I spend all week dealing with work. When I'm with you, I want to focus on us. It was reasonable. But something nagged at Roland, a sense that she was holding something back. Not maliciously, he didn't think that. But there was a wall there, a part of her life she kept carefully separated from what they shared. Still, he let it go. Everyone was entitled to privacy, especially in a relationship still so new. The weekend away, Celeste said, brightening. I found a perfect place. A small bed and breakfast upstate, right on a lake. Quiet, beautiful, no distractions. What do you think? It sounds wonderful. I already made a reservation for 3 weeks from now. Is that enough time to arrange your schedule? Roland did quick mental calculations. He'd need to swap shifts, maybe lose some income, but it would be worth it. Time alone with Celeste, away from all the stress and obligations. I'll make it work, he promised. She reached across and squeezed his hand. Thank you. I think we need this. Time to just be together. To really connect without constantly being pulled in different directions. As they left the cafe that afternoon, walking through familiar streets hand in hand, Roland pushed down his doubts and fears. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever secrets Celeste kept, they'd face them together. That's what people did when they loved each other, and he did love her. Completely, terrifyingly, wonderfully. 2 weeks before their planned weekend getaway, Roland's world shifted again. This time in a way he couldn't have anticipated. He'd just finished his warehouse shift when Pete called him over to the office. Got a minute? Roland followed, wondering if he'd made another mistake, if the damaged merchandise from weeks ago had finally caught up with him. Instead, Pete gestured to a chair and sat down across from him. I've been watching you, Roland. You're one of my best workers, always have been. But lately you're running yourself ragged. I'm managing fine. You're working yourself to death is what you're doing. Pete leaned forward. Look, I know your rent went up. Half the building's dealing with the same thing, and I know you're too proud to ask for help. So I'm not asking, I'm telling you. We've got a team lead position opening up. Better hours, better pay. 45 hours a week instead of your current schedule, and about 30% more money. It's yours if you want it, Roland stared at him. Team lead. Pete, I don't have any management experience. You've been doing the job without the title for years. You train new guys, you troubleshoot problems, you keep things running smooth. I've already talked to upper management. They're on board? Say yes, Roland. Take the promotion. It felt too good to be true. Better pay, fewer hours. It would solve his rent problem and give him more time with Celeste. But old habits of self-doubt ran deep. Why me? Because you earn it every single day. Because you show up, you work hard, and you treat people with respect. That's leadership, whether you call it that or not. Pete extended his hand. What do you say? Roland shook it, feeling something warm bloom in his chest. Thank you. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stop working yourself into an early grave. Walking to his car that afternoon, Roland felt lighter than he had in weeks. He couldn't wait to tell Celeste. He pulled out his phone to call her, then hesitated. She'd mentioned another business trip this week. Where was it? Chicago? Dallas? He couldn't remember. He sent a text instead. Good news to share when you have time. Hope your trip is going well. Her response came an hour later. Can't wait to hear it. Stuck in meetings all day, but will call tonight. That evening, Roland treated himself to takeout from his favorite Chinese place, a luxury he rarely indulged in. He was eating lo mein straight from the container when Celeste called. Tell me your good news, she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. He explained about the promotion, the better schedule, the raise. Celeste's excitement was palpable, genuine. "Roland, that's wonderful. You deserve this so much. When does it start?" "Next month. Pete wants me to shadow the current team lead for a few weeks first." "I'm so proud of you." Her voice softened. "See? Good things happen to good people." They talked for another hour, easy conversation about everything and nothing. Celeste told him about a restaurant she'd tried that served the worst pasta she'd ever tasted, making him laugh with her dramatic description. Roland shared a story about Mr. Kowalski's latest attempt at growing tomatoes on his balcony, which had resulted in exactly one tiny tomato after 3 months of effort. When they finally said goodnight, Roland felt more content than he could remember. The promotion, Celeste, the upcoming weekend away, his life was coming together in ways he'd stopped believing possible. The next morning, he was walking to his security job when he ran into Elsie on the street. She was coming from a coffee shop near her office, laptop bag over her shoulder. "Dad, what are you doing in this neighborhood?" "Security job is just a few blocks over." "What about you?" "Meeting with a client." "Hey, you look happy. Really happy." He told her about the promotion. Elsie threw her arms around him right there on the sidewalk. "This is amazing." "Oh my God, Dad, you can finally breathe a little. Maybe even save some money. Maybe even take a real vacation someday. Speaking of which, how are things with Celeste? You two still seeing each other?" "We are. Actually, we're going away for a weekend in a couple of weeks. A bed and breakfast upstate." Elsie's expression shifted, became more serious. "Dad, can I ask you something? And please don't get defensive." Roland felt his guard go up. "Okay. What do you actually know about Celeste? I mean, beyond what she's told you? Where she works, what she does, her background." "She works in property management and investments. She travels a lot for business." "What are you getting at?" Elsie bit her lip. "It's probably nothing. But Veronica, you remember from the wedding? She mentioned something weird the other day. She said her mother saw a photo of you and Celeste together at the wedding in some society magazine. Apparently, there was a caption about Celeste being some kind of millionaire philanthropist." Roland felt the ground shift beneath him. "That's ridiculous." "Celeste isn't. She drives a normal car. She dresses simply. I know. That's why I haven't said anything until now. I figured it was just Veronica's mom getting confused, mixing her up with someone else. But Dad, have you ever Googled her? Just to, see what's out there? No, that feels like invading her privacy. Or it's being smart. Look, I'm sure it's nothing. But maybe just, I don't know. Ask her about it. If she is wealthy, why would she hide that from you?" After Elsie left, Roland stood on the sidewalk, his earlier happiness curdling into unease. Celeste, a millionaire. It was absurd. Everything about her suggested a normal, professional woman. Comfortable, but not wealthy. But small things began clicking into place. The vagueness about her work, the frequent travel, the way she'd offered to pay for their weekend away without blinking. Her suggestion that he let her cover his time off work. No, he was being paranoid. Elsie had said it herself, probably just a case of mistaken identity. Still, when he got home that night, Roland found himself sitting in front of his laptop. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before he typed Celeste Whitmore. The search results loaded. The first page was filled with articles, photos, business news. Roland clicked on the first link. Celeste Whitmore, heir to the Whitmore Hotel fortune. Announced today a new philanthropic initiative focusing on affordable housing. His heart stopped. He clicked another article. And another. Photos of Celeste at charity galas, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, business conferences. Descriptions of her family's hotel empire. Her personal net worth estimated at over $40 million. Her position on various corporate boards. Her reputation as a private person who avoided the spotlight despite her wealth. Roland sat back, his mind reeling. The woman he'd been dating for weeks, the woman he'd fallen in love with, was one of the wealthiest people in the state. And she'd never mentioned it. Not once. All those simple dates, the coffee shop, the park, the free concerts. Had she been slumming? Playing at being normal while hiding who she really was? The hurt came first, sharp and cutting. Then the humiliation. He'd been agonizing over rent increases while she could probably buy his entire building without noticing the expense. He'd brought her supermarket flowers while she was used to, what? Arrangements that cost more than he made in a week? And she'd lied. By omission, maybe, but still lied. His phone rang. Celeste. Roland stared at her name on the screen, anger and confusion warring with the love he still felt. He let it go to voicemail. She called again 5 minutes later. Again, he didn't answer a text. Roland, is everything okay? You're worrying me. He turned off his phone. That night, Roland didn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every date, looking for clues he'd missed. The way she'd talked about her parents' focus on success and achievement. Of course, they'd been wealthy. Her expensive-looking clothes that she somehow made seem casual. The ease with which she navigated upscale restaurants on the rare occasions they'd gone to them. How could he have been so blind? More importantly, why had she hidden it? If she truly cared about him, why not be honest from the start? The answers that came to him were all painful. Maybe this had been a game, a rich woman's experiment in dating someone real. Maybe she'd planned to eventually reveal the truth, to see his reaction, to confirm that everyone wanted her for her money. Maybe she'd never taken them seriously at all. By morning, hurt had hardened into something closer to anger. Roland went through his day mechanically. Warehouse shift, brief sleep, security shift. His co-workers noticed his mood, but wisely said nothing. Elsie called. He didn't answer. Celeste called 3 more times. He ignored them all. By the second day, the texts from Celeste had become more frantic. Please talk to me. Whatever's wrong, we can discuss it. I'm worried about you. Good, a bitter part of him thought. Let her worry. Let her feel a fraction of the uncertainty and fear he'd been living with while she'd kept her secrets. On the 3rd day, Elsie showed up at his apartment, using the spare key he'd given her years ago. Dad, we need to talk. I don't want to discuss it. Too bad. Celeste called me crying. She's terrified something happened to you. She's been calling hospitals, for God's sake. Roland felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it aside. Did she tell you who she really is? She told me everything. About the money, about why she didn't say anything at first, about how she fell in love with you and was too scared to tell you the truth because she thought you'd react exactly like this. Like what? Like someone who doesn't appreciate being lied to? She didn't lie, Dad. She kept part of her life private until she felt safe sharing it. There's a difference. Is there? We've been together for weeks. I told her everything about my life, about Linda, about my struggles. And she let me talk about money worries while sitting on a fortune. Do you know how that makes me feel? Elsie sat down beside him on the couch. I can imagine. Embarrassed, angry, maybe a little betrayed. But Dad, did you ever stop to think about why she might have been cautious? You told me yourself what happened with Linda, how she left because you weren't enough for her. Now imagine being Celeste, never knowing if people want you for yourself or for your bank account. Can you blame her for wanting to be sure before she revealed everything? Roland wanted to stay angry, but Elsie's words were eroding his certainty. She should have told me, he said, but even to his own ears it sounded weaker. Maybe, but you should talk to her, hear her side. Don't throw away something real because you're scared. I'm not scared, yes you are. You're terrified that she's going to realize what Linda said, that you're not enough. So you're pushing her away first before she can leave you. Don't do that, Dad. Don't sabotage your own happiness because of fear. After Elsie left, Roland sat alone with his thoughts for a long time. Was she right? Was he using Celeste's deception as an excuse to protect himself from potential heartbreak? He picked up his phone, looked at the messages from Celeste. The latest one, sent an hour ago. I love you, Roland. Please let me explain. Please don't shut me out. I love you. She'd never said that before, not directly. And he'd been too caught up in his hurt to even acknowledge it. Roland took a deep breath and typed, I need some time to think. But I'm okay. I'm sorry I worried you. 3 dots appeared immediately. Thank you for responding. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk. He set the phone down and looked around his small apartment. The financial planning folder sat on his desk, a reminder of all his careful budgeting, his constant struggle to make ends meet. Beside it, the ticket stub from their concert in the park, a reminder that Celeste had seemed happiest at their simplest moments together. Which version was real? The wealthy heiress in the news articles, or the woman who'd held his hand under the stars while free music played? Maybe, he thought, they both were. And maybe that was what scared him most, that someone so far above him in material wealth had chosen to be with him anyway. Because if it was true, if she really did love him for who he was, then he had no more excuses, no more walls to hide behind. He'd have to be brave enough to believe he was worthy of being loved. 5 days after discovering the truth, Roland finally agreed to meet Celeste. Not at their usual cafe. That felt too intimate, too much like pretending everything was fine. Instead, he suggested a neutral location, a bench in the riverside park where they'd walked together so many times. He arrived early, his stomach churning with anxiety. The autumn air had turned colder, winter approaching. He pulled his jacket tighter and sat down, watching leaves skitter across the path in the wind. Celeste appeared right on time, walking slowly toward him. She looked tired, her face pale, eyes shadowed. When she reached the bench, she stood there uncertainly until Roland gestured for her to sit. They sat in silence for a long moment, both staring at the river. "I'm sorry," Celeste said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I should have told you sooner. I know that now. Why didn't you?" Roland kept his voice neutral, not wanting to attack, but needing to understand. She took a shaky breath. "Because I've spent my entire life watching people change when they find out about the money. Friends who suddenly need loans. Men who see dollar signs instead of me. Family members who only call when they want something. The money colors everything, Roland. It becomes the only thing people see, so you thought you'd just hide it forever." "No, I was going to tell you. I kept trying to find the right time, the right way. But the longer I waited, the harder it became. And I was so afraid," her voice broke. "I was so afraid you'd look at me differently. That what we had would change." Roland turned to look at her. Tears were streaming down her face. "When I met you at that wedding, you treated me like a person. Not a bank account, not a connection, not a business opportunity. Just a woman who needed a friend for the evening. Do you know how rare that is? I didn't know I was supposed to treat you any other way." "Exactly. And then we started dating, and you were so genuine, so real. You brought me supermarket flowers like they were the most precious things in the world. You took me to free concerts and cheap cafes, and you never apologized for it because you didn't think there was anything to apologize for. You saw me, Roland. Not my last name, not my bank account. Just me." Her words chipped away at his anger, revealing the hurt beneath. "I told you everything, Celeste. About Linda leaving, about struggling to make rent, about working 3 jobs. I was completely honest with you. And all that time, you were sitting on a fortune that could have solved every problem I mentioned. How do you think that makes me feel?" "Small," she said quietly. "Embarrassed. Maybe a little foolish." "Yes," he admitted. "All of that. I never wanted you to feel that way. That's exactly what I was trying to avoid." She turned to face him fully. "Roland, I don't care about the money difference between us. It's just numbers. It doesn't define your worth or mine. Easy to say when you're the one with the millions." The bitterness in his voice hung between them. Celeste flinched but nodded. "You're right. I can't fully understand how this feels from your perspective. But I need you to understand mine. My parents were wealthy, but their love was conditional. I had to earn it through achievements, through being perfect, through bringing value to the family name. Real affection, genuine connection. I never had that." She pulled out a tissue and wiped her eyes. "When I was 19, a man proposed to me. I thought he loved me. Turned out he'd never even asked what my dreams were, what I wanted from life. He just knew my net worth and saw an opportunity. I've had variations of that happen dozens of times. So yes, I was cautious, maybe too cautious. But can you understand why?" Roland felt his anger deflating, replaced by something more complicated. He could understand, even if he didn't like it. "What happens now?" he asked. If we try to make this work, everything's different. I can't take you to dinner without wondering if you're silently comparing my cheap pasta to restaurants I can't afford. I can't." He struggled to articulate the fear. "I can't be an equal in this relationship, Celeste. The power imbalance is too great. The power imbalance only exists if we let it. Roland, I don't want your money. I have money. What I want is your time, your attention, your partnership. Those things have nothing to do with bank accounts, but they do. Don't you see? Every decision, every plan, every moment will be colored by this. You could buy me a car on a whim. I saved for months to take you to a decent restaurant.
How is that equal?
Celeste was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful, measured. You're right. It's not equal financially. But Roland, you're looking at the wrong kind of equality. Yes, I have more money, but you have things I don't. You raised a daughter alone with grace and love. You've built genuine friendships with your neighbors and co-workers. You find joy in simple things. A free concert, a walk in the park, a cup of coffee. I had to relearn those things through you. She reached for his hand, and after a moment's hesitation he let her take it. I'm not asking you to match my bank account. I'm asking you to share your life with me, to teach me what really matters, to be my partner in the ways that count. She squeezed his hand. Let me help with things when I can, not because you're less than me, but because that's what people who love each other do. They support each other. Roland wanted to believe her, but the voice in his head, Linda's voice, kept whispering that this wouldn't work, that he'd eventually disappoint her, that the gap between their worlds was too wide. Before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it. Elsie. Normally he'd let it go to voicemail, but something made him answer. Dad, where are you? Elsie's voice was tight with stress. The Riverside Park. Why? What's wrong? I need you. Can you come to my apartment? It's important. I'm in the middle of... Please, Dad, I really need you right now. He looked at Celeste, torn. She nodded immediately. Go, she needs you. We can talk later. Roland stood, still holding his phone. I'm sorry. Don't be. Go take care of your daughter. That's what good fathers do. He left her sitting on the bench, looking small and alone, and hated himself for the relief he felt at the interruption. 20 minutes later, Roland arrived at Elsie's apartment to find his daughter pacing. Her phone clutched in her hand. What's going on? Are you okay? I'm fine. But Dad, you need to see this. She pulled up something on her phone and handed it to him. It was a text message thread. Someone named Veronica, Elsie's friend from the wedding, had sent a series of messages. Roland read them, his stomach sinking with each line. My mother is insufferable. She's been gossiping about your dad and Celeste to everyone. Apparently she saw them at Riverside Manor last week, that fancy restaurant downtown. Said your dad looked completely out of place, and Celeste was clearly doing charity work. Her words, not mine. I'm so sorry, Els. I told her to stop, but you know how she is. Another message. She's planning to enlighten poor Roland at the Anderson Charity Gala next month. Says he deserves to know what everyone really thinks about their little romance. I tried to talk her out of it, but she won't listen. Roland looked up at Elsie, confused. The Anderson Charity Gala? I don't understand. Elsie took a breath. Veronica just told me her family is going to this big society event next month. And apparently, so is Celeste. She's on the planning committee or something. Okay, but what does that have to do with me? Veronica's mother, Beatrice. She's the one who hosted the wedding where you met Celeste. She's been apparently telling everyone in her social circle about you two, making comments about the poor working man and the millionaire heiress. She thinks it's all very amusing. Roland felt heat rise to his face. He'd known intellectually that Celeste's world had people like this, judgmental, superficial. But having it confirmed, knowing they'd been gossiping about him, laughing at him, there's more, Elsie said gently. Beatrice is planning to make a scene at this gala. She wants to publicly embarrass Celeste, or you, or both of you. Something about exposing the farce of your relationship. Why would she do that? Because she's a cruel, bored woman who gets her entertainment from other people's pain. But Dad, the point is, you need to talk to Celeste about this. She needs to know what's coming. Roland handed back the phone, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to walk away from all of it. The gossip, the social politics, the world where he'd never belong. But another part, the part that had fallen in love with Celeste, wanted to protect her from this poison. Dad, Elsie touched his arm. What are you going to do? I don't know. He left Elsie's apartment and walked for a long time, trying to process everything. The conversation with Celeste had left him raw and confused. Now this, evidence that their relationship was entertainment for people who saw him as fundamentally less than. Linda's words echoed again. You'll never be enough. His phone buzzed. A text from Celeste. Are you okay? Is Elsie all right? He stared at the message for a long time before typing. She's fine. Just needed to talk. I need more time to think. I understand. I love you, Roland. He turned off his phone without responding. That night, lying in bed, Roland made a decision. He would go back to Celeste, not to reconcile, but to end things cleanly. It was the kindest thing he could do for both of them. She deserved someone from her own world, someone who could navigate society galas and business dinners without embarrassment, someone who wouldn't be a source of gossip and mockery, and he deserved, what? A simple life with a simple partner. The thought felt hollow, unsatisfying. Because the truth was, he didn't want simple anymore. He wanted Celeste. He wanted her laugh and her vulnerability and the way she made him feel seen and valued. But wanting wasn't enough. Love wasn't enough. There were practical realities, social realities, that couldn't be overcome by good intentions. He would tell her tomorrow. Let her down gently, wish her well, walk away before either of them got hurt worse. The decision should have brought relief. Instead, it felt like choosing to amputate a healthy limb, necessary perhaps, but devastating. Sleep didn't come that night. Roland lay in the darkness, his father's watch ticking on the nightstand, marking the hours until he would do the hardest thing he'd done since Linda left. He would let Celeste go, for her own good, for both their sakes, even if it broke his heart. Roland called Celeste the next morning, his resolve firm despite the heaviness in his chest. They agreed to meet at the park again, the same bench where so much had already been said and left unsaid. But when he arrived, determined to end things cleanly, he found her holding a stack of papers. Before you say anything, Celeste said quickly. Please read these. She handed him the papers. They were letters, handwritten, dated over the past several weeks. Roland recognized her elegant script immediately. I wrote these, but never sent them, she explained. Every time I tried to tell you the truth about who I am, I'd write it out first. Trying to find the right words the right way. I was a coward, Roland. I kept these instead of being honest with you. Roland sat down and began reading. The first letter was dated 3 days after their coffee date. Dear Roland, today I almost told you about my family's business, about the money. But when you talked about saving up for months just to take Elsie to a nice graduation dinner, I couldn't do it. Not because I was ashamed of you, never that, but because I saw how you lit up talking about that dinner, about the pride you felt being able to give her that moment. I didn't want my wealth to diminish that pride, to make you feel like your sacrifices meant less. They mean everything. The next letter was from after their museum visit. You told me today that you didn't belong in places like that museum. It broke my heart. I grew up in mansions and penthouses, surrounded by expensive art and culture, and I was lonelier than I've ever been. Today, walking through those galleries with you, seeing you appreciate beauty for its own sake, that was the most at home I've felt anywhere. You belong everywhere, Roland. I wish you could see that. Letter after letter, documenting her internal struggle, her growing love for him, her fear of losing him. The last one was dated 2 days ago. I've ruined everything by waiting too long. You know the truth now, and I can see in your eyes that it's changed things between us. You think the money makes us unequal, but you're wrong. You've given me something I never had, genuine connection, laughter, a sense of being valued for who I am rather than what I have. Without you, I'm just wealthy and alone. With you, I'm whole. I love you, Roland. I'm just afraid I realized it too late. Roland's hands trembled as he set down the papers. Celeste was crying silently beside him. I'm not asking you to ignore the money, she said. I'm asking you to see past it to what really matters. We're good together, Roland. We make each other better. Isn't that worth fighting for? He wanted to say yes. Every fiber of his being wanted to pull her close and promise they'd figure it out. But doubt still gnawed at him. There's something else you need to know, he said quietly. He told her about Beatrice, about the planned humiliation at the charity gala, about becoming gossip fodder for her social circle. Celeste's expression hardened. Beatrice has always been spiteful. I should have known she'd do something like this. This is your world, Celeste. These are the people you have to deal with. And he gestured at himself helplessly. I'm just going to be a liability. An embarrassment. You're not an embarrassment. They are. She took his hands. But I understand if you don't want to deal with it. If you want to walk away, I won't stop you. I just need you to know that I'd face 1,000 Beatrices if it meant keeping you in my life. Roland sat in silence, torn between fear and love. I need to think, he said finally. Celeste nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. But Roland, think about what you really want, not what you think you deserve. Those aren't always the same thing. Over the next few days, Roland found himself caught in an internal war. Part of him wanted to run, to protect himself from inevitable hurt. But another part, the part that had come alive since meeting Celeste, refused to accept defeat so easily. He talked to Elsie, who was unequivocal in her support. Dad, you've spent your whole life putting everyone else first. For once, choose what makes you happy. He talked to Pete at work, who laughed and said, So she's rich. So what, does she treat you well? Does she make you happy? Then what's the problem? Even Mrs. Chen weighed in when she caught him in the hallway. That woman who comes to visit you, she has kind eyes. Don't let her go because you're afraid, Roland. Fear is a terrible reason to give up on love. But it was a conversation with Mr. Kowalski that finally shifted something inside him. You know what I regret most in my life? The older man said, as they sat on his balcony, looking at his single tomato plant. Not the risks I took, the ones I didn't take. I had a chance once to move across the country for a woman I loved. Didn't do it because I was scared. Married someone else, had a decent life. But I always wondered what if. Don't be me, Roland. Don't spend your life wondering. That night, Roland pulled out the letters Celeste had written. He read them again, slowly this time, hearing her voice in every word. He thought about the woman who'd approached him at a wedding with a simple request. Let's pretend we're together. How that pretense had become the realest thing in his life. He thought about her bringing him flowers at their first date, even though he'd been the one who should have brought them. About how she laughed at his terrible jokes and listened to his stories like they mattered. About the way she'd looked at him in the museum, not with pity or condescension, but with genuine respect and affection. The money didn't change who she was. It was just a fact about her life, like his 3 jobs were a fact about his. They both had circumstances they navigated. The question wasn't whether those circumstances were equal. They weren't. The question was whether they could build something meaningful despite them. Roland picked up his phone and called. Celeste, I want to try, he said when she answered. I'm scared and I don't know if I can handle your world, but I want to try. Because losing you, that scares me more than anything else. He heard her sharp intake of breath. You mean it? I mean it. But Celeste, we need to be honest with each other from now on. No more secrets, no more hiding parts of our lives. If this is going to work, we need complete transparency. Yes, she agreed immediately. Anything, everything, I'll tell you anything you want to know. And this gala, Beatrice's plan to embarrass us, we face it together, as a couple. Show them we're not ashamed. Are you sure? Roland, it's going to be uncomfortable. These people can be cruel, I'm sure. Because you were right about something. I've been letting fear dictate my choices. Letting other people's opinions define my worth. I'm done with that, he took a breath. I love you, Celeste. And I'm choosing us, whatever that means. I love you too. So much. They made plans to meet the next day to really talk. To figure out how to merge their different worlds into something that worked for both of them. As Roland hung up, he felt simultaneously terrified and liberated. He was stepping off a cliff, but this time he trusted someone would be there to catch him. The Anderson Charity Gala was 3 weeks away. Roland and Celeste spent that time rebuilding their relationship on a foundation of honesty. She showed him her world, not to intimidate but to help him understand. She took him to her office, a sleek space in a downtown high-rise. introduced him to her assistant, a sharp woman named Patricia, who smiled warmly and said, "So you're the one who's made her happy." About time, she showed him her lake house, the one she'd mentioned months ago. It was beautiful but not ostentatious, filled with comfortable furniture and books. "This is where I come to escape," she explained, "where I can just be myself." In turn, Roland introduced her more fully to his world. She met Pete and his co-workers at the warehouse, joined him for one of Mrs. Chen's impromptu hallway conversations, sat with him during his security shift one quiet evening. "Your life is so much richer than you give yourself credit for," Celeste said, sitting across from him at the security desk. "All these people who care about you, who respect you. You've built something real, Roland." "So have you," he said. "We've just built different things. Maybe we can build something together now." They talked about the gala, about what to expect. Celeste was honest about the social dynamics, the subtle cruelties, the judgment he'd likely face. "Beatrice will probably say something cutting," she warned. "Others will be watching to see how we react. Some will be genuinely curious, some will be looking for entertainment. How do you handle it?" "I usually don't engage. I smile, stay polite, and refuse to give them the reaction they're looking for." She looked at him seriously. "But Roland, if it becomes too much, we can leave. You don't have to prove anything to these people. I'm not trying to prove anything to them. I'm proving something to myself, that I'm brave enough to stand beside you, no matter who's watching." The day before the gala, Celeste surprised him with a gift, a beautifully tailored suit, custom-made to fit him perfectly. "I can't accept this," Roland protested. "It must have cost—" "Please," she interrupted gently. "Let me do this. Not because I think you need it, but because I want you to feel confident tomorrow night. You deserve to walk into that room feeling good about yourself." He tried it on. The fit was perfect, the fabric luxurious against his skin. Looking in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. "You look incredibly handsome," Celeste said from behind him. "I look like I'm wearing someone else's clothes." "No, you look like yourself, just dressed for a different occasion." She wrapped her arms around him. "The man matters more than the suit, Roland. Don't forget that." The night of the gala arrived. Roland picked up Celeste from her apartment, his palms sweating despite the cool evening air. She looked stunning in a deep green gown, elegant and understated. "Ready?" she asked, taking his arm. "As I'll ever be." The venue was the grand ballroom at the Riverside Hotel, one of Celeste's family properties she'd mentioned. The irony wasn't lost on Roland. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, servers circulating with champagne. It was beautiful and intimidating in equal measure. As they entered, heads turned. Roland felt the weight of dozens of eyes assessing them, judging. He kept his head up, his hand steady on Celeste's arm. "Celeste, darling." A woman in an elaborate gown swooped toward them. "So wonderful to see you." "And this must be Roland," Celeste said smoothly. "Roland, this is Constance Perry. She's on the Hospital Foundation board with me." "Lovely to meet you," Roland said, offering his hand. Constance shook it, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "How delightful." "Celeste, we simply must catch up later." She glided away. "That wasn't so bad," Roland murmured. "That was the easy part. Wait until we run into Beatrice." They mingled, Celeste introducing him to various guests. Some were genuinely warm, others coolly polite. Roland held his own, answering questions about his work honestly, refusing to apologize for who he was. Then Beatrice appeared, resplendent in diamonds and barely concealed malice. "Celeste." "And Roland, what a surprise to see you here." Her voice carried, designed to attract attention. "I didn't realize this was the type of event that interested you. So different from your usual, what was it? 3 concerts in the park?" Roland felt Celeste tense beside him, but he spoke before she could. "Actually, I prefer those concerts," he said pleasantly. "Better music, better company." But Celeste wanted to support the hospital foundation, so here we are. Beatrice's smile sharpened. "How sweet." "Celeste, you always did have such interesting charity projects." The implication was clear, that Roland was another one of her charitable causes. Celeste's voice turned cold. "Roland isn't a project, Beatrice. He's my partner. And he has more integrity in his little finger than most people in this room have in their entire being. Oh, I'm sure he does. It's just so unusual, don't you think? The difference in your backgrounds. The only thing unusual, Celeste said clearly, her voice carrying now, is how some people measure worth. I measure it in character, in kindness, in how someone treats others when there's nothing to be gained. By that standard, Roland is wealthier than anyone here. Beatrice's face flushed. Others had stopped to listen. Well, Beatrice said tightly, how romantic. I do hope it lasts. As she walked away, Roland turned to Celeste. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Because she needed to understand something. You're not my embarrassment. You're my pride. She took his hand. Come on, let's dance. On the dance floor, Roland held her close, aware of people watching, but no longer caring. Thank you, he whispered. For standing up for me. Always, she promised. That's what love means. The music swelled around them as they moved across the dance floor. Roland was acutely aware that they'd become the center of attention, that conversations had quieted to observe them. But Celeste's steady presence calmed him, reminded him why he was here. You're doing wonderfully, she whispered. I'm terrified. Me too. But we're terrified together, which makes it bearable. As the song ended, a man approached them, silver-haired, dignified, with kind eyes that reminded Roland of his own father. Celeste, the man said warmly. Might I steal a moment? Of course. Roland, this is Harrison Webb, chairman of the Hospital Foundation. She turned to Harrison. Harrison, my partner, Roland. Harrison shook Roland's hand firmly. I wanted to say something, if you'll indulge an old man. I've known Celeste since she was a child. I've watched her navigate this world with grace, but always from a distance, never quite letting anyone in. Until now, he looked between them. Whatever you two have found together, it's made her happier than I've ever seen her. That's worth more than all the money and status in this room. Roland felt emotion tighten his throat. Thank you, sir. That means a great deal. After Harrison left, Celeste's eyes were bright with tears. See, not everyone here is like Beatrice. The evening continued. Some guests remained cold, others warm to Roland's genuine nature. He found himself in a conversation with a surgeon about the challenges of shift work, their shared experience of exhaustion creating unexpected common ground. But it was during dinner that everything crystallized, seated at a table with Celeste and 6 other guests. Roland found himself next to a woman named Francine, who asked what he did for a living. I'm a team lead at a distribution warehouse, Roland said simply, and I work security part-time. Across the table, a man named Stuart raised an eyebrow. 2 jobs? That must be demanding. 3, actually. Though I recently consolidated to 2 when I got the promotion. Francine looked genuinely interested. What made you choose that career path? Roland could have deflected, given a vague answer. But Celeste's hand found his under the table, a gentle encouragement to be honest. I didn't choose it, really. When my daughter was young and her mother left, I took whatever work I could find to keep us afloat. The jobs stuck, and I built a life around them. It's honest work, and it let me provide for Elsie. That was all that mattered. You raised your daughter alone. Francine's expression softened. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was. But also the best thing I've ever done. She graduated with honors, has a great career now. I'm proud of her. Stuart cleared his throat. I have to say, that's admirable. I work 70 hours a week at my law firm and barely manage my own life. I can't imagine doing it while raising a child alone. The conversation shifted, others sharing their own stories of struggle and sacrifice. Roland realized that beneath the expensive clothes and polished exteriors, these were just people, some kind, some cruel, most somewhere in between. After dinner, as guests moved to the terrace for coffee, Roland excused himself to find the restroom. On his way back, he encountered Beatrice again, this time alone in a quiet hallway. Enjoying yourself? She asked, her tone dripping with false sweetness. Actually, yes. How quaint. Tell me, Roland, what exactly do you think happens next? You and Celeste ride off into the sunset, live happily ever after. Roland met her gaze steadily. I don't know what happens next. Nobody does, but I know what's happening now. I'm with someone I love, who loves me back. That's enough, love, Beatrice laughed. How long do you think that lasts when reality sets in? When she realizes she's tied herself to someone so far beneath her station? Something in Roland shifted. He thought of his father's watch, of 20 years raising Elsie alone, of every sacrifice he'd made and every moment of quiet dignity he'd maintained. He thought of Celeste's letters, of her tears when she told him she was afraid of losing him. You're wrong about something, he said quietly. I'm not beneath anyone. I work hard, I treat people with respect, I love deeply. Those things have value, whether you recognize it or not. And if Celeste sees that value, then she's wiser than you are. Beatrice's expression hardened. We'll see how long your pride lasts when you're still struggling to pay rent while she writes checks for more than you make in a year. My pride doesn't come from my bank account. That's the difference between us. He started to walk past her, then paused. I hope someday you find something real in your life, something that isn't about status or appearances. You might be happier. Back on the terrace, Roland found Celeste waiting, worry evident in her eyes. I saw you talking to Beatrice. What did she say? Nothing that matters. He took both her hands. Celeste, I need to tell you something. These past weeks I've been so focused on our differences, on what I couldn't offer you. But I realized tonight, I do have something to offer, myself, my love, my loyalty, my partnership. It's not millions of dollars, but it's real and it's yours, if you want it. Celeste pulled something from her purse, a small velvet box. Roland's heart stopped. I've been carrying this for a week, she said, opening it to reveal a simple gold band, a man's ring. I wasn't sure if tonight was the right time. But after everything, Roland, I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to pretend or hold back or be afraid. Will you marry me? Roland stared at the ring, then at her tear-filled eyes. He thought of his mother's ring, the one he'd mentioned to Celeste weeks ago, sitting in his apartment drawer. I have a ring too, he said, laughing through sudden tears. My mother's. I've been carrying it in my pocket for the past week, trying to find the courage to ask you the same thing. He pulled out the simple gold band, smaller. Feminine, worn smooth with age. I can't match your wealth, he said, but I can match your heart. Celeste, will you take a chance on a poor man who loves you more than anything in this world? Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, yes. They exchanged rings there on the terrace, crying and laughing, while inside the gala continued without them. It wasn't a formal proposal, wasn't planned or perfect. But it was theirs, honest and real and exactly right. When they finally returned to the ballroom, hands clasped and wearing each other's rings, Beatrice saw them and her face went pale. The pretense was over. What they had was real, and nothing anyone said could diminish it. 6 months later, on a warm spring afternoon, Roland stood in the same riverside park where he and Celeste had shared so many conversations. But today was different. Today, rows of white chairs faced a simple arbor decorated with wildflowers. Today he was getting married. The ceremony was small, deliberately so. Elsie stood beside him as his best woman, beaming with pride. On Celeste's side stood Patricia, her assistant, and Harrison Webb, who'd offered to walk her down the aisle when she'd mentioned having no family to do so. The guests were a carefully curated mix. Pete and several warehouse co-workers sat in the front row. Mrs. Chen dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Mr. Kowalski gave Roland a thumbs up. Celeste's few genuine friends from her world were there too. People who'd proven their support was real, not performative. Notably absent were people like Beatrice and her social circle. Celeste had been clear. This wedding was about celebration, not obligation. As the small string quartet began to play, Celeste appeared. She wore a simple cream dress, no veil, no elaborate train, just herself, beautiful and radiant, walking toward him with steady steps. When she reached him, Harrison placed her hand in Roland's and stepped back. The officiant smiled at them. We gather today to witness something rare and precious, two people who found genuine connection in a world that often values everything but that. Roland barely heard the rest. He was focused on Celeste's face, on the tears of joy in her eyes that mirrored his own. When it came time for vows, Roland spoke first, his voice steady despite his emotion. "Celeste, when you approached me at that wedding and asked me to pretend we were together, I never imagined it would become the most real thing in my life. You've taught me that I'm worthy of love, that my value isn't measured in money or status, but in how I treat others and how I show up each day. I promise to love you honestly, to be your partner in all things, and to never let fear keep me from choosing us. You are my greatest gift." Celeste's voice trembled as she responded. "Roland, you saw me when I felt invisible. You valued me when I felt worthless beyond my bank account. You taught me what simple joy looks like, what genuine connection feels like, what love without conditions means. I promise to honor your strength, to support your dreams, and to build a life with you based on what truly matters: kindness, respect, and the deep love we share. You are my home." They exchanged the rings they'd already been wearing for months, his mother's simple band on her finger, her grandfather's on his. Circles of gold that represented family, legacy, and the new life they were building together. "I now pronounce you married," the officiant declared. "You may kiss." The kiss was soft, sweet, and met with enthusiastic applause from their guests. The reception was held in the park's community center. No fancy ballroom, no elaborate catering. Instead, it was a potluck celebration. Pete had brought his famous pulled pork. Mrs. Chen contributed homemade dumplings. Celeste's friends had arranged for a local bakery to donate a simple but beautiful cake. It was chaotic, loud, and absolutely perfect. During the toasts, Elsie stood first. "My father spent his entire life teaching me that wealth is measured in love. Today, watching him marry Celeste, I see the richest man I know. Dad, you deserve every bit of happiness you found. And Celeste, thank you for seeing what I've always known, that he's extraordinary." Harrison spoke next. "I've attended hundreds of weddings in my life, elaborate affairs costing more than most people make in a year, but I've rarely seen what I see here today. Pure joy, genuine community, and two people who truly understand what marriage means. To Roland and Celeste, may your love continue to defy expectations and inspire us all." As the afternoon faded to evening, Roland and Celeste found themselves alone for a moment on the terrace overlooking the river, the same spot where they'd shared so many pivotal conversations. "Happy?" Celeste asked, leaning against him. "Beyond words. You? More than I ever thought possible." She looked up at him. "Thank you for being brave enough to take a chance on us. Thank you for not giving up on me when I was too scared to see what we could be." They'd found compromises in the months since the gala. Celeste had stepped back from some of her business obligations, focusing more on the charitable work that fulfilled her. Roland had accepted the team lead position and used his better schedule to pursue the woodworking hobby he'd abandoned years ago. Together, they'd started a small foundation, funded by Celeste's wealth but guided by Roland's understanding of working-class struggles. They provided scholarships for single parents, helped families facing eviction, created opportunities for people who worked hard but needed a break. It wasn't about Celeste's money or Roland's lack of it. It was about what they could build together, using all their resources, financial, emotional, experiential, to make a difference. They'd bought a small house together, not one of Celeste's properties, but a modest home in Roland's neighborhood, close to his work, near his friends, in the community he'd built over decades. Celeste had fallen in love with the neighborhood's warmth, with knowing the people next door, with being part of something real. The lake house remained their weekend retreat. The office downtown stayed Celeste's professional base. But home was that small house with the creaky porch and the garden Roland was learning to tend. As the reception wound down, Roland and Celeste prepared to leave for a simple honeymoon, a week at a cabin in the mountains. Just the two of them. "Before we go," Celeste said, pulling out a photo album, "I want to show you something." She opened it to reveal pages she'd been filling, photos from the wedding where they'd met, the coffee dates, the museum visit, the park concerts, pictures of them at his apartment and her office. At the warehouse with Pete and at charity events with Harrison. A visual story of two different worlds, blending into one shared life. This is us, she said.
All of it.
The fancy and the simple, the wealthy and the working class, the public and the private. It all matters because it's all part of our story. Roland looked at the album, at their faces in each photo, always smiling, always together. Remember when you asked me to pretend we were together for one night? Best decision I ever made, mine too. Because the pretending became real, and the real became everything. They left the reception hand in hand, driving away from the celebration toward their future. Behind them, their guests continued dancing and laughing, celebrating love that had overcome doubt, fear, and social barriers. Roland glanced at Celeste beside him, her hand resting on his knee, his mother's ring catching the fading sunlight. He thought about that lonely man at the wedding reception 6 months ago, sitting in a corner table, feeling invisible and resigned. He'd spent his whole life believing he had nothing to offer beyond hard work and sacrifice. She taught him that a genuine heart was the rarest treasure of all. Sometimes, he reflected, the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be seen. And sometimes, the greatest fortune is finding someone who sees your true worth.